Let's go. Let's start.
Let's go.
Welcome, everybody, back to the One Day Podcast. It's your host, Alan.
And your other host, Lizelle. We are talking all things communication because if you guys have been listening to us for a minute, then you would know that we pretty much bring that up in every single episode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
majority
like
of the stuff that
communication is key.
we talk about is all communication, especially
Yeah.
now that we're long distance. That's all we have, right? And we give these type of tips or these advice because that's how everything's going to work. It's just such a cliche thing, like, oh, communication is key. You know how they always say that? It
Yeah.
actually really is, you know?
It is, yeah. Actually, I was just thinking before we get into our points, because we're going to be like giving you guys kind of like our tips and our own, kind of talk about our own personal lived experiences with learning the art of communication, because I feel as though being long distance, as much as people can look at it as like a negative thing, like, oh, long distance, damn, like that must be hard, or oh, it's so difficult. But one thing that Alan and I really like to do is have a look at the bigger picture and be like, okay, what is the positive thing in this? When we do self-reflection, we always talk about how being long distance really taught us how to hone in on our communication skills and how to
Yeah.
improve them.
Absolutely.
So I feel like it's kind of a good thing that our relationship started long distance. I mean, it's still continued on as long distance because, yeah, we've really been forced to better those skills. And one thing that we were talking about the other day, I don't know if you remember me bringing this up to you, love. And of course, this goes for regular relationships as well. But I feel as though in our long distance relationship, this is just what I've experienced and like seen within our personal experiences. But what I've noticed is that when we talk in our conversations, they're not just the regular mundane conversations that you would
I
have
remember.
in an everyday, day-to-day type of conversation for like a regular relationship. And that's not me like bashing on, you know, like, oh, you can't have these kind of conversations. You don't get to know someone well enough if you're in a regular relationship. There's like different dynamics to it, right? But I
Right.
feel as though in a regular relationship, when you're living together and you've developed habits and a routine, there are points where you would have deep conversations about like, I don't know, we talk about the most random stuff. I mean, as in, we're not sitting here asking each other the mundane questions of like, what do you want to eat today? What are we going to do on the weekend? What are
Or
we
how was
what are we doing
work?
tonight? Yeah.
Right, it's
And
not just like the surface stuff that everyone
yes,
just
yes,
talk
that's what
about,
I'm
you
trying
know?
to say.
Yeah, it's just not just the normal. How's your day going? What
Yes,
did you
yeah.
do? You know, so it's definitely deeper than that. We definitely segue to different things, deeper things, current events. So it's
Yes.
good. We definitely talk about a lot of stuff and we communicate a lot. And you know, and before we even give any type of advice or tips or anything, just know that we're not perfect.
Oh,
These are
hell
the things
no.
that we're learning and
Yeah.
constantly learning and constantly improving. So that's why this topic is really good for everybody because we're constantly improving and learning because we fall back into like not using these as well, and then we call out, we keep each other accountable and tell, hey, you know what, we're doing this, and now we can step back and then adjust, right? So that's the beauty
Yeah.
about this, that we're all not perfect, but there's room for improvement. So
Yeah, I feel as though the first step to improving something is to recognize what it is that you can improve upon. So
sure.
if you're able to sit there and be like, oh, damn, like, yeah, we don't do that, or we haven't tried that, or we need to do more of that, or we need to do less of that, that's
Yep.
where you can, yeah, have a bit of reflection on the situation and analyze it and go forth to improve. So,
right.
yeah, for us, like Alan said, we aren't perfect. We're not here to, like, sit here and be like, this is the standard and No, we're definitely not perfect. But this is all stuff that we have recognized within our relationship that we've had to navigate through and that we've definitely improved. And that's not to say that we've improved it and we always stay up here. Sometimes we dip back down again, but we keep each other accountable to recognize, like, hey, like, let's like check ourselves. So you want to get started with the tips, babe?
Yeah, let's go. So the first one, I have my cheat sheet here, is appreciating what your partner is doing well, not what they're doing that they could do better. You know, and a lot of times, you know, you can fall into like just criticizing them so much that you're not even like telling them what they're doing right, you know, and they could do something for you and all you could point out is all the negative stuff, right?
Yeah, that's definitely not a good thing. You have to kind of put yourself in your partner's shoes a lot of the time and be like, okay, if I was talking to them like this, like, how would I feel? I feel like that's where you can really decide, like, oh, is this necessary to say or is this necessary to do? For example, like, I don't know, you love sneakers. I don't know you love buying me sneakers.
Right.
So if you were to buy me a pair and I was like, oh my God, I love them, but I wish you would have got me like a different colorway.
Right.
Like, that's not nice. Like, that's not very nice to say because, you know, your partner has gone out of their way to do something nice for you, to have this nice gesture, give you something nice, whatever the situation may be. And for you to be like, oh, that's cool, but like, it's the but that hurts the most, you know? So I feel like there's a better way of going about it. But to me personally, I just feel like saying that in itself is, you know, kind of rude. It might seem very innocent and it might not seem like something that's a big deal. Yeah, if you're constantly harping on about like, oh yeah, you washed the dishes good, but you missed a spot. Oh yeah, you swept the floor, but you forgot to pick up this thing. Like, it's just like you're giving them a compliment, but you're taking half of it back, and then they're gonna feel like they're not appreciated.
A backhanded compliment.
Yeah, backhanded compliment. That's it. Yeah, it's funny because I actually saw a TikTok. Here's me talking about TikTok all the time, but I saw a TikTok. I think it was a video of this guy who had set up this like cute little romantic thing for his girlfriend, and he brought her to like the Pandora store, if you guys know Pandora, that jewelry store.
Yeah,
and
we have it here.
You know, he set up like this cute little thing, even blindfolded her. I don't know if he got like the store clerks on it, the sales assistants on it, so they were all like kind of helping him out with it. He brought her into the store, had her blindfolded, and then when they were at like the little counter to pick out, you know, whatever it was, I don't know if he was trying to pick her a ring or something, but when they got to the counter, he took the blindfold off, and you know, she was all like smiling, like, oh my gosh, babe, like, what's going on? And then he took the blindfold off and her face dropped. Like, she was like, what the F? Like, what is this? You think I'm gonna want any of this stuff? And oh my gosh, I felt so bad, like, watching his reaction. You know, situations like that, like, clearly he was trying to do a good, cute and sweet gesture for his partner. And obviously it wasn't something that she wanted, but she straight away was like making him feel bad for it. And it's just like, you got to put yourself in that position. It is, isn't it?
That's
yeah,
horrible.
You got to put yourself in that situation and be like, how would I feel if I did something nice for my partner? And they kind of were just like, oh, cool.
Exactly. Or like, imagine if like I come home one day and I brought you like some white roses or something like that, right? This is like a Tuesday. It doesn't even have to be a Valentine's Day, and I did it just to do it, right? And then you say to me, oh, I love these, but I wish it was a red roses.
I know, yeah. And see, you'd be like, oh, sorry, I didn't get the red. Sorry,
exactly.
Like
you have to
so
understand
sad.
that, you know, you put in that effort and then you just get let down by like, but I wish it was just something else. And I'm like, you should appreciate at least what the gesture or what they do for you.
Yeah, it just comes down to that. Like, I feel like in terms of like etiquette and being kind to your partner, because I feel like sometimes people get too complacent and comfortable in relationships and they forget manners. You know what I mean? Right. So things like that, you might not like the red roses. You might not like the Pandora jewelry store, but it's kind of like when you're a little kid and you get given gifts by like grandparents and you're like, oh, it's a pack of socks. Thanks.
That's the first thing I thought about too, is socks.
But you still show your appreciation, you know what I mean? Because it's the thought that counts. So yeah, I feel like it's important to appreciate what your partner does for you, appreciate the effort that they're trying to put in, and don't put so much emphasis on, oh, I wish you would have done it like this. Oh, I wish you would have done this instead. Oh, it's nice, but should have done it like this. Because that's going to make them feel like, well, damn, I don't want to do anything. Because you ain't going to appreciate it anyway. So that's just something to think about.
Man, I grew up having that experience. Like once you're giving someone a gift and they're like, they just like ask you for the receipt and it's like, I want to get something else. That's a horrible feeling.
No,
I've had that experience growing up and I'm like, wow, I thought what I picked was something that you'd like. At least appreciate that, or I put the effort into doing that. But they're just like, do you have the gift receipt? You know, or can we exchange this? It's a really bad feeling. Like you put in so much effort and thought into the gift. And, you know, it could be something simple, but they still don't want it. Or they want something else. It's like, geez.
So, next point, one that I think is pretty important as well is it's important to ask questions rather than making assumptions. And I feel like this is one that's really easy to slip into, is assumptions. Because, you know, naturally, I feel like assumptions create they're like a trigger for a lot of, you know, disagreements that can occur, different scenarios that can occur. And I feel like assumptions are created without proper communication being in place. So to me, assumptions generate defensiveness. So for example, if I'm accusing you of something and it's not something that you've done, of course you're going to get irritated and be like, but I didn't do that. Like, what are you talking about? It's like when you're a little kid and you're in the playground. I don't know, what can I think of? You get teased and some kid's like, oh, I saw this person do that. Even as a child, you're like, no, I didn't. I don't. Like, that's just naturally what we do, like, even as kids. So I feel like accusations and assumptions do generate defensiveness. And sometimes I feel like in that situation, it's better to ask questions. And for the person who, I don't know, may be accused of like doing something or not doing something, it's also important to recognize within yourself, like, okay, I shouldn't get defensive about this. Let's just have like a civilized conversation rather than like getting irritated or upset about the fact that this person is accusing me or creating assumptions about something. That's my viewpoint on it. It's important to ask questions, and it's just so much easier that way rather than being like, oh, I'm pretty sure you did this or you didn't do this, or it's just easier to be like, hey, did you do this, or hey, did this happen?
I mean, imagine if like we don't see eye to eye one time and you start telling me like, oh, why are you still mad, and why are you doing, you know, like you're telling the other person that they're still mad without asking them how they're actually feeling at the moment, right? You're already assuming that they're upset, but they're not even like mad at all. But because you're assuming that naturally that other person is going to feel defensive. Then they're going to be like, well, I'm really not mad, but you could have asked me first, say, hey, how are you upset? How are you feeling? You know? So before jumping into conclusion, just, it's a simple thing to do. And we all forget to do it. Just ask a question. How are you feeling? Are you upset? Are you still mad right now? Because after that, then they can answer. Then you give them a chance to answer. Say, hey, you know what? I'm over it. I'm not even upset at all. And then it could be squashed right there, instead of like assuming that they're upset, and then you get into it even more, you know?
Yeah. I also think about kind of in the beginning stages of a relationship and like getting to know someone and kind of getting a gauge for like, where things are going and how they're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
We've spoken about this before, but when Alan and I first started getting to know each other and we first started talking like on a more serious like level,
Mm-hmm.
rather than me being like, oh, I don't know if he likes me, I'm not sure, like maybe he does, I
Right.
just was straight up like, hey, this is how I feel,
Mm-hmm.
what's your view, like how are you feeling? Like
Yeah.
I was very straight up, and that's because I feel like when you're sitting around being like, oh, I don't know, I'm not sure, it's just causing unnecessary like stress and anxiety. And it's like
For
if you
sure.
just come forth and be
Just
open
ask.
straight
Yeah, and
up,
ask.
yeah, I feel like that needs to be more normalized. Like
Mm-hmm.
just ask, just be straight up, put yourself
Yeah.
out there, ask. If it's not received the way that you would like it to be, it's okay. Like there's no
Mm-hmm.
need to have an attachment to that. So
Yeah.
that's just another thing that I think of as well. That's like probably one of the number one things where
Mm-hmm.
certain, I don't know, situations, disagreements can be easily avoided just
Yeah.
by simply asking a question rather than making assumptions,
For
which then
sure.
turns into like defensiveness and
Mm-hmm.
arguments. Like it's just a lot easier to just ask. And then
Right.
you can go from there and have a conversation about like what's concerning you. So, next one as well. This is something that you and I have had to navigate through,
Yep.
and that is offering empathy before jumping into feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the way that I interpret this is like, how do I put it, babe? Like when I come to you and I'm like stressed about something or I'm upset about something,
Mm-hmm.
because out of the two of us, I'm more emotional, you're more logical.
Mm-hmm.
So I may come to you and be like super stressed out about work or upset about a situation that's happened. And I come to you to kind of like vent and explain how
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling. And
Mm-hmm.
I just want somebody there to listen and to talk
Right.
to.
Exactly.
But because you're more logical, your first instinct is to be like, oh my gosh, she's going through this. Let me figure out how to help her. So
Right.
your first instinct is like, okay, so have you tried this? Do you want to do this? Would you like to do this? Let's
Mm-hmm.
do this. And I'm like, damn, I don't want like a solution right now. I just want you to listen to me.
Right. I get it. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is definitely something that we go through and something that I
Yeah.
learned over time because me living by myself for so long, I've always, and all, like she said, I'm very logic. So it's like I detach my emotions and I jump into like solution oriented. Like I'm just going to find out a way to get out of that so that I don't feel that way anymore. Because I
Yeah.
don't like swimming in like that bad emotion. So
Right.
for me, it's like, okay, so what do I need to do? So when sometimes Lizelle comes up to me and yeah, you just need someone to vent and say what's going on and how you feel. And my reaction to it is more like instead of just listening and seeing, oh, I understand where you're coming from, I jump into the what's okay. So this is how we should do so you can get out of that emotion. And
Yeah.
yeah, these are the things that we still work through. And now at least we know and we could recognize these things. Now I could pivot and change these things. So I'm definitely more aware now. And now I could actually like comfort her instead of just giving her solutions all the time.
Yeah, and I think when I realized that this was something, because
Mm-hmm.
naturally I would already be upset about
Mm-hmm.
something, like sad about something, and I'm coming to you just as like a shoulder to lean on, somebody to talk
Right.
to. And because I'm already upset, and then you're there trying to
Mm.
navigate through, like, okay, what can we do to fix this? And it's like upsetting me further because I'm like, I don't need
Right.
to fix that right now. Like, I just need to
Right.
talk about it and get my
Mm.
emotions out there so then I can analyze how I'm feeling and then
Mm-hmm.
go into like creating a solution for whatever issue
Yep.
it is that I'm facing. So sometimes, like, I'll be real, Alan and I would get into like disagreements because I'm like, I don't need to be. I didn't need to come up with a solution right now. Like, I just want you to listen to me. And I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of, I'm not going to generalize all women, but I feel like a lot of women probably do experience this as well, where they just want their partner to just take a minute and like listen.
Right.
So I think the way that you and I kind of navigated through that is that we sat down and spoke about how that made me feel when I would come to you with something and you would just
Right.
be so like logical, because you don't get emotional. Like Alan is not, I mean, you do get emotional, but not about everything. That's like,
Right.
you pick and choose like what's worth getting emotional about, right? And we
It's
kind
like
of sat
selective
down.
emotions.
Right, exactly. So we sat down and decided, like, okay, next time I come to you with that type of situation where I just need to vent and talk to you, like, Alan will ask me, like, okay, so do you need me to just listen and comfort you, or do you want me to help you come up with a way on how to fix this? Because naturally, like I said, Alan is such a solution oriented person. He's very, very logical, and he's not the type of person to let his emotions get the best of him. So before a problem even grows and expands to become more than what it actually is, he's already like fixed it. Whereas I'm like, just let me like feel my emotions for a second. So that's where we're different, and that's where
Yeah.
I kind of had to sit with him and be like, you know what, babe, like sometimes I just need you to listen to me, and that's
Yeah.
it. Like you don't need to jump into logic and solution mode. Like we just need to talk. So I feel like that's a way to kind of navigate through that and talk to your partner about how to overcome that, is like just have them ask you like, okay, do you want a solution or do you just want comfort right now?
You know what? When you found that, yeah, I don't know where did you find that? I remember
I
you
think I
came up with it.
saw a thread on Twitter or something, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the solution
Exactly.
for the
Right. So
problem. Yeah.
as soon as you brought that up to me that's already a solution oriented to fix it. So I'm like, okay, so now at least I know how to ask instead of like just give you unsolicited advice, right? Because as
Yeah.
soon as you tell me what's going on, my my first instinct is, hey, she's not feeling good. Let me make her feel good, or let me. I don't want her to feel that way, and I don't want her to feel bad. So, how can I get rid of that emotion as quickly as I can? Because I want to get back to the regular program. You know, like, I just
Yeah.
want to be happy.
Yeah.
But, and I get it. You know, times like that helps me really understand that yes, we're all not alike. Everyone is brought up differently. Everyone goes through things differently. And
Yeah.
sometimes I have to literally pull myself back and it's like, you know what? That's definitely not how you do it. And it's okay for her to do it or somebody else to do and how they feel and accept that because that's them. They're not you. You're never going to be them. And you can't dictate how they feel. You're going to
Exactly.
just listen, and when they're going to be over it, they're going to be over it. It's not when
Yeah.
you say you're going to be over it, right? So it's
Yeah.
more like let's listen, let them go through it, go through that emotion, and then when they're ready to like say, you know what, I'm ready to change or I'm ready to find a solution, then you could kind of gauge them.
Yeah. As opposed
Yeah.
to straight away being like, oh, well, did you try doing this or have you done that? And
Right.
it's like, it will just further. I know for me personally, like, I'll be honest, yes, it does like trigger me even further when you straight away get into like solution and problem solving mode, because I'm like, can we just like slow it down for a sec? Like I just need to process how I'm feeling rather than coming up with a like logical reasoning as to how to solve it. So yeah, like Alan said, everybody operates differently. Everybody navigates through their feelings and emotions differently, and that's something that you and I have definitely learnt through our
Yeah.
relationship and our modes of communication and how we navigate through certain situations and feelings, is that we're not the same, and that's
Yeah.
okay. It's just all about learning about your partner and figuring out what works best between the two of you as to how
Right.
to navigate through those
Right.
situations.
Yeah. I think recognizing is a big thing because if you don't even recognize that or you're aware of your other partner and how they are, then you're always going to assume like they should be feeling the way you feel all the time or they should
Yeah.
be solving the things that you should solve this way, you know? So just really listen, pay attention, and be aware of your partner and how they're feeling and how they navigate through things because they're never going to do the same thing you do.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's really important. So that brings us to our next point, which again, I think this is all a part of like manners and etiquette within a romantic relationship, and that is to learn how to make requests as opposed to making demands. And
Right.
the way that I interpret this is it's better to ask your partner rather than like ordering them around to do things. So for example, okay, let me do your LDR edition first. If I was like, babe, can you please call me at this time? That's a nice way to ask. But if
Right.
I were to be like, call me at this time, text me at this time, do this, do that, like you're gonna be like, damn, she's demanding. Like
Right.
because it's all about the delivery of
For
how
sure.
you execute the delivery of asking for something. So there's different ways of how to communicate. There, I feel like demanding is a very aggressive, dominating way
Yeah.
to ask for things, but asking nicely, like making requests, is like a nicer way to do it. And I feel like I think I said this earlier that in relationships it's very easy for us to fall into complacency where we kind of forget to have manners and to, you know, be kind and ask for things nicely and just be kind to our partner, because
Yeah.
it's like that situation where you become comfortable with them and you become jaded, and it's like, well, I
Yep.
can treat them that way and they're still going to be there.
Right.
So I feel like
Exactly.
so
That's
I feel
that's
like
exactly what I thought about. As soon as you said that, I'm like, people do get comfortable. So like after a while, you just get comfortable,
which is
and
natural. It's
it is
completely
very
normal.
natural. But I think, like you said, rule of thumb, you just be nice. You know, just be nice. That's something that you it doesn't cost to be nice. You just be nice. You know, instead of demanding things, you can request it and ask nicely.
Yeah, and for me, like manners go a long way. Like it's not that I hold it against someone, but I feel like I'm very attentive to when I can tune into when someone is asking for things nicely. I don't know if it's just the way that I've been brought up, but I am very attentive to when somebody says, please, thank you, you're welcome. Like, even in a relationship, like, for example, if I asked you to wash the dishes when we lived together, rather than me being like, babe, don't forget to wash the dishes, or even more aggressive, if I was like, babe, wash the dishes, you better wash the dishes, or if I asked in a nicer way, like, hey, babe, could you please
Right.
do this? Could you please do that? It's much nicer to communicate in that way as opposed to being aggressive and like demanding things. Do you know
Right.
what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
just feel like it's all in your delivery, and like manners and kindness costs nothing and it goes
It
a
doesn't.
long way.
Honestly, daily, from what I know and what I remember, what we do daily is like we always ask, "Hey, can you please wake me up at this time?" Every day we do it, even though it should be like we could easily assume these things, or we could easily say,
Yeah.
"Oh, they should." You could just say, "Hey, wake me up at this time." You know, like we definitely ask each other nicely, "Hey, please, can you please wake me up at this time?" Because it changes almost every day
Yeah.
depending on what we do, because our hours are so just different, and depending on if you stood up or I stood up, and even like I ask you all the time, like, can you please remind me, because I
Yeah.
have so much on my plate every day, and I do so much like things every day, like from waking up and taking care of my daughter, getting her ready, all the things I do on top of work, and then making sure I communicate with Lizelle and spend time with her as well. I'm gonna miss things, and I always ask nicely instead of like being comfortable and making demands like wake me up, or remind me this, do this. I always try to ask nicely every day.
It's such a minuscule thing, like please, thank you, you're welcome.
Yeah,
Like these are things that we're taught, well, I would hope that we're taught like as
right.
kids. And it literally like it's the tiniest thing, but it
Yeah,
can make a huge difference.
yeah,
And I know when you're in a relationship with somebody, yeah, it's easy to get comfortable and you can just ask for anything and everything and it will be done.
Right.
But I feel like choosing to ask nicely and deliver it in a nicer way where you're asking, not demanding,
Right.
it's just more pleasant to deal with. But yeah, that brings us to the next point, which is to see someone's like best side to help them bring out their best side. It's very empowering to your partner to offer them words of encouragement. Like, rather than focusing on what they're not good at or what you think they can't do
Right.
or whatever it may be, focusing on, yeah, encouraging, empowering, motivating is going to make them feel good, and it's going to it's going to empower them. So
Right.
that's definitely something that you and I focus on in our relationship. If I was to, I don't know, okay, I'm about to put you on blast and expose you right now, babe. But you know how you always tell me that you're super clumsy? Like, you always, in the beginning stages of us getting to know each other, that was just something that Alan brought up, is that he feels like he's clumsy. But I don't bring that up and be like, oh my god, babe, yeah, you're so clumsy. Oh, you're so clumsy. You do this all the time. Oh my god, no wonder you're so clumsy. Because that's kind of, how do I explain this? It's kind of like enforcing that belief that he has of himself,
Right.
that negative belief, and it's manifesting it to produce even further, where it's
Right,
like,
exactly.
you are not that quality of yourself. That's just what you've conditioned yourself to believe. Like, if you believe that's what you are, sure, that's going to be what you are. So rather than
Exactly.
focusing on that negative thing, why don't we focus on empowering and motivating our partners into being like, you know what, you're not that. You're actually this. You're kind. You're hardworking. You're motivated. You're passionate about what you like to do, as opposed to being like, oh, he's just clumsy. Like, oh,
Right.
he can't do that because he's just this. What was an example I put to this earlier, love?
About like, say someone's like trying to quit smoking.
Right, yeah. If your partner wants to embark on a life change, right?
Right.
Whether it be smoking or better eating, losing weight, exercising, right?
Right.
And this is like a big life
For
change for
sure.
them. And rather than me sitting there and being like, oh, you can't do that, or okay, we'll see if you
We'll
can
see.
actually do it. Like,
Exactly.
that's not going to make them feel good. It's better to encourage them and motivate them and empower them so that they feel like you're on their team and you're in their corner cheering them on, as opposed to focusing on the negatives that you feel like they will produce. So that's just how I feel about it. How do you feel about that?
For sure.
Love,
I
like
mean,
that point.
going back to what you said earlier, yeah, I've always felt growing up, because it's through family, and it's definitely not something that was encouraged. That I was like they didn't see the good side. It's like, oh, you did this and you did that. You could have done this. You could have done that. And I literally was clumsy growing up, but like, it's okay growing up like that, but when people point it out even more, it's even worse, right? Then you start believing it. So like, I've
Right.
always had that feeling growing up that stuck till I'm an adult. And one
Right.
thing that you recognize from the beginning is to not do that. Like,
Yeah.
I remember last year, I didn't cook a lot. Imagine if you're like, oh, why didn't you do it like this? Or why didn't you do it like that? But like, you literally put a battery on my back, and now I could like pretty much cook anything. Like, you give me a recipe, and I would show you right after what I cook, and you're like, oh my god, that looks good. I can't wait till you cook for me. I can't wait till we eat together. So it's always been empowering every single time. We go through something, and you're really good at empowering me all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like, as opposed to me being like, oh, he never cooks, so he ain't ever gonna learn,
Right.
rather than me focusing on that, I would rather be like, look, baby, it's not hard to do. We can just do it like this. Like, let me teach you, let me show you. This
Right.
is how you can do it. This is how you can make it easier for yourself, as
Right.
opposed to being like, oh, You don't know how to do it, just let me do it. Or you don't know how to complete that task, I'll just do it myself. Like, it's just not very empowering to your partner to make them feel like, okay, they trust me, they believe in me, they want to see me do well. So focusing on someone's positive attributes as opposed to their negative.
Yeah.
Because not like everybody isn't perfect. Nobody is going to be the full, complete, perfect package. We all have flaws and imperfections to ourselves, whether that be physically or, like you said, you feel as though you're clumsy. I don't feel as though you're clumsy, though. I just feel like that is a conditioned belief that has been implanted within your mind since you've been a child, which you've brought into adulthood with you. So it's not necessarily that you're clumsy, but because you have been conditioned to believe that from a child up until the age that you are now, whenever on the odd occasion that you do something that's clumsy, you automatically are like, oh, it's because I'm clumsy. But it's not. It's just we all make mistakes and mess up. It's not necessarily that we are those negative things. Sometimes those are just things that have been subconsciously, like I said, implanted into our minds as children that we bring into adulthood with us. And those are things that we have to teach ourselves to unlearn, because it's very easy. That's the thing about us humans, is that we're very quick to pick up things. We're very quick to learn things.
We are.
But unlearning things, that's a whole different story. It takes much longer to unlearn conditioned things as opposed to learn things. So I feel like if you're in a relationship with someone and, I don't know, they're pointing out their own negative attributes. Like, I know sometimes I talk about myself and I'm like, oh, yeah, I do worry too much and I do stress out so much. But the more that you verbalize those beliefs and put them out there, I really do believe that what you focus on grows. And if you're really instilling those beliefs within yourself, you naturally become in tune to them, and that's all you believe, right? For partners, it's really important to not focus on that conditioned belief that they may have, or even to point out things to them that are negative. I mean, within reason, because obviously there are things that we can improve upon. But I mean, as in certain things, like certain attributes, like you said, clumsy. You feel like you're clumsy.
Right. I'm
not here to point that out to you all the time, because I don't believe you are. It's just that's something that you've been conditioned to believe, like growing up. So I feel like if we focus more on empowering, on encouraging, on motivating, that's more positive for our partner to recognize and be like, you know what? Yeah, I can't do that, or I am more than that. Those are things as well that should also be brought into when it comes to raising children. If we're instilling within them, oh, you don't know how to do that, you're not good at that, then they're going to start believing it, because as humans, naturally, we believe like what we're told and what we're conditioned to on the regular. So yeah, that was a very long spiel about that point. I'm sorry, you guys. I get really passionate about like motivating and empowering. This is something that Alan and I talk about a lot. But yeah, next point. You ready for the next one, Liv?
Yeah.
All right. So the next point that I feel like is important in terms of communication is listening to understand someone, not judge them. So say, for example, if I was opening up to you about something that I had experienced in the past or something that I'd gone through, you would want your partner to listen to you and be like, oh, okay, rather than be like, oh my gosh, why did you do that? Oh, that's so bad. Like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. Oh my gosh. Like, it's just not a good feeling when you're being vulnerable with somebody and they're straight away making you feel like they're judging you.
Yeah, they're definitely judging you that way.
I feel like it's important to be in a relationship where you're able to open up to one another and do so in a way where you feel like there's not going to be any judgment coming from both sides.
No, I completely understand. Like, we're so quick to judge. You know, we're not there to listen and try to understand where they're coming from. You know, and we're always like, oh my God, you should have said this, you should have done that. And we're not like going down to their level and how they're feeling at the moment, because you're removed from what they're feeling. So the first thing you do is like judge them and label them as, oh, you did this, why'd you do that, you know?
In that sense, if I don't know, what's an example I can put to this? If I was opening up to you about something that I had done in the past and you were so quick to judge and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that. That's going to make me not want to open up to you again. It's going to make me pull back and put up a wall and close off, and then it creates a barrier between the two of you. So I feel like being vulnerable, especially in new relationships, is very difficult. I know for us, like, I think I was kind of closed in the beginning. And I think naturally that was out of protection of my own feelings. I'm sure a lot of people like experience that as well. But learning from your partner, like, okay, I can tell them things and they're not going to judge me or make me feel bad, I feel is an important part of communication, and also forming that relationship with your partner where they feel like they can come to you with anything, anything, and they're not going to be judged. Because, again, like, we're all human. Nobody's perfect. And, it's important to just listen. Sometimes growing up, if I were to talk to my parents about something, and the first, again, kind of like you in that sense where they're very solution-oriented, the first thing is like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. You should have done this instead. And it's like, oh, like, it just makes you feel bad.
You feel bad, and then you start closing up, and you definitely don't want to share anymore after that.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I feel like not just for the partner who is judging, because like we said in the very beginning, the first key to improving anything is recognizing the action that's being done that you can improve upon. So I think it goes back to keeping each other accountable as well. Like, it's not just up to the person doing the judging to be like, oh, whoops, sorry, my bad, like, I shouldn't have judged. But, like, if you feel as though this is something that your partner does, you could come to them and be like, hey, I feel like you constantly judge me, and it makes me feel uncomfortable, and I want to work through a solution where that's not something that we do in this relationship. So,
for sure.
Yeah, I feel like that's really important.
Well, one thing I remember, there's tons of times where in the beginning where I would just, like, maybe because I was just so opinionated and I didn't realize I was that negative or judgmental, where I would point things out with other people and you would say, hey, that's not nice. You shouldn't, you called me out on it. And I'm like, you know what?
I did. Yeah.
I took a step back and looked at it, and I'm like, yeah, maybe that's just how they want to wear their clothes or wear their hair, or how to, that maybe that's what they can afford at the moment. Who are you to, like, judge anyone? And I literally had to take a step back and, like, you know what? You're absolutely right. Like, who am I to make any judgment on anybody? That's just how people are, and that's what they like, what they want to do. I had no control of that. I shouldn't put any judgment on that. And recognizing that, knowing that that's not, like, I had to accept, like, because you're so, like I said earlier, you're so opinionated, and you think, like, oh, I'm telling my partner these things, but don't you think you're telling your partner and it's still hurtful for them to hear that you're judging somebody else? So, like, as soon as you called me out on it, I'm like, you know what? You're absolutely right. And that's something I definitely need to fix. And I think that, I told you, that kind of stemmed within, like, the 90s mentality of, like,
that
making
culture.
Fun of people, that whole culture of, like, snapping back, because that's what we did growing up in the 90s. Like, you made fun of people just from their clothes, they smell, how they wear, their haircut, anything about them. You're in school, you're always constantly just, like, trying to make fun of them to be funny and to be, like, to be popular or whatever. We just, for some reason in the 90s, that's the mentality, right?
Yeah.
And I had to explain that to Leizell. And as soon as she told me, I'm like, you know what? You're right. That was really bad and is really mean. And as soon as I recognized that, I'm like, you know what? Let me just switch that up, right? And then I had to, like, because now she could say something, and now I don't have to, like, judge her or that other person for her sharing how she thinks and how she feels about what she's telling me.
But going back to what we were saying, listen to judge. No, sorry, not listen to judge. Listen to understand, not to judge. I feel like is very important. in relationships, it just helps the two of you open up to one another, be more vulnerable, and know that the two of you can come together and talk to each other without any, again, judgments. And it just opens up that space for more open and honest communication with each other. So this moves on to the next topic, which is to focus on what you do want as opposed to what you don't want. And this is something you and I talk about a lot, I feel.
We do.
When you're focused on negativity, more negativity is going to present itself to you and breed.
For sure.
Because, for example, if I'm sitting out in a field surrounded by beautiful flowers, but there's clouds over top, and I'm like, oh, it looks like it's going to rain.
Right.
And I'm so focused on like, damn, like it really looks like it's going to storm. As opposed to like what I'm literally surrounded with, a beautiful field of flowers.
Right.
How can you enjoy the good around you if you're so focused on the storm that's about to hit? Like it's all about, I feel like it kind of ties into living more presently in the moment. So.
And appreciating the moment too.
Exactly. Yeah. So I feel like it's really important to learn how to focus on what you do want as opposed to what you don't want. And it's important to call your partner out on that as well.
For sure.
I know that's definitely something that you and I have experienced with one another, is that sometimes, for me personally, like, yes, I can get into a little bit of a negative mindset where I feel as though like, oh my gosh, why is this long distance relationship like it's so difficult, it's so hard. I feel like this is something that I experienced more in the beginning, and now I'm kind of all settled with it, where I had a really hard time being in this long distance relationship. Like it was not fun for me at all. And I feel like once I realized, like, do I want to spend my time being upset about this, or do I want to learn to live in the present, be like, what's the good that I can enjoy in this day?
Right. Yeah. My take into this is, again, like you said, that's the perfect example. In the beginning, like I've already accepted that this is going to be a long distance relationship. It's going to be for the long haul. So, and again, it's temporary. Nothing's permanent.
Yeah.
And that's always been my mentality since the beginning. And I've always voiced that with you. And I said, you know what? Don't worry. Again, this is why we even started the one day podcast, because we kept saying one day, one day, one day. One day we're going to do this. One day we're going to meet. One day we're going to travel. We're going to do this. And again, we've proven that time and time that we are capable of achieving those things. So I've always thought, like, you know what? Let's just appreciate and do what we can do while we're apart, and do everything we can do and stuff that we can control. Because there's a lot of stuff we can't control. Things are always going to happen, whether you like it or not. Like, it could be raining outside, and one person could look at it like, you know, oh my God, it's like, now it's like my day is ruined, you know? Or I could look at it, I'm like, you know what? Now I could play in the rain. You know, I love the fact that it's rain now. It's cool. It cooled down the weather, and I could play. You know, it's fun. You know, when you're a kid, you didn't even think about it. You just went out there and played. Again, for me, it's always like things that you can control. Like, you can control what you can do, but there's always going to be something that's going to happen where you have no control of. So what can you do? Just readjust your mindset, and then it starts up there. It really starts up there. Your mindset
really does.
Is really, really important. It sets the mood for the whole day, right? Like, you could stub your toe in the morning, and just that whole day would be ruined for you. Or you could stub your toe and just do something that's going to be positive, or that you're going to feel good about. And like, if you stub your toe and, like, say, you know, you were late for work and something bad happened, like there was an accident, I'm like, aren't you glad that you stubbed your toe and now you were late and you weren't in that accident? You know, so there's like, I always say that there's always a reason why things happen. And if that's the reason, your mentality just has to shift and say, you know what can I do now? How can I adjust? How can I pivot? And what can I do now? And those are the things you can control. Instead of just complain and say, hey, you know what, this is bad, and why me? Have that like victim mentality.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I feel like that's definitely something that I learned in this relationship. we do get a lot of messages, and I get a lot of messages as well from people who are also in long distance relationships.
Right.
Kind of, I guess, venting how they feel about the difficulties of being in a long distance relationship. And I can totally empathize, you guys. Like, I know that it is not easy to be in a long distance relationship. There are great days and then there are not so great days.
Right.
But I feel as though while your feelings are valid, and I can totally understand how it feels, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with feeling that way,
Right.
you also don't want to get sucked into that emotion where you are so fixated on that negative feeling that you're experiencing that that's all you can focus on, and you don't even get to enjoy your relationship for what it is. Because I understand, I feel like now, especially because of the pandemic, and a lot of people have been forced apart and they haven't been able to see each other for quite a long period of time, a lot of people become fixated on how difficult it is and how hard it feels.
Right.
But they don't even get to enjoy the fact that they have a loving relationship. So that's the piece of advice that I always give. And I know perhaps it's not what people like want to hear, but yeah, I always say, while it's valid that you feel that way, it's important to not stay focused and fixated on that emotion. Like, you can feel it, let yourself feel it. It's important to feel these emotions. Don't suppress them, but don't stay in that bubble of emotions for too long, because you'll miss out on the present moment. You'll miss out on what you could be experiencing as a positive thing. So that's definitely something that I learned within our relationship, is that, like, it kind of was like a light bulb moment. And I woke up one day and I was like, do I want to spend like all my time being upset about the fact that we can't be together? Because you guys have to understand, Alan and I haven't seen each other for over a year.
Yeah.
And what are we, like halfway through 2021? So yeah, it's probably looking like it's going to be quite a while longer, depending on the situation. But it's like, if you're spending more time apart from your partner, if you feel like I'll only be happy once we're together, and you're spending more time apart from them, how are you enjoying your relationship? Like, how are you having a good time in your relationship if you're spending years, like, okay, for example, let's say that you get to see your partner for 1 month every year. How are you gonna have a good time in your relationship if you're sad for 11 months out of the 12-month year? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And like I said, it's okay to get upset about things, but don't focus on it. Don't settle into those emotions and that's all you feel every waking moment, because it just, it's not fun for either party. Like, if I was like upset all the time, and then you're going to feel like, damn, I really don't contribute to her happiness, because at the end of the day, and at the beginning of the day, we are all in charge of our own happiness. I can't rely on Alan to make me happy, because the happiness starts from within. It starts in my own head. I have to create that for myself, and he can only add to that and contribute to that. He can't give me happiness. That's something I have to generate for myself. So I feel like it's really important to remember that, is that your happiness doesn't lie within your relationship or the situation of your relationship or the circumstances of it. Your happiness lies within your mindset and your perception of what you choose to accept as your reality. So that's definitely a big thing that I feel like is a very positive thing in this relationship, is that it really taught me all about shifting your mindset and focusing like your thoughts on the positive attributes as to focusing on the negativity and being like, oh my god, this sucks, LDRs suck, I hate being long distance. Like, don't get me wrong, there are days where Alan and I joke around with each other like, damn, this sucks, like, it's been a minute since we've seen each other. But it's more of like in a joking way now. We're not actually feeling it because we've accepted it for what it is. And yeah, it really is all about your perception and your mindset. And the way you choose to look at the world. Like you said, if it's raining, you could look at it and be like, there goes the whole day. Or you can like make something of it, go play in the rain, or even be like, oh, this is perfect Netflix weather. Like,
Right.
do you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's always a positive side to
Mm-hmm.
everything, and it's up to you to choose to focus on the positivity as opposed to the negativity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I still remember that day where it's like a light bulb for you, and I was so proud that
Yeah.
it really literally dawned on you. I'm like, you know what? I shouldn't be feeling this way. I should be
Yeah.
enjoying the moment. I should be enjoying our relationship. Like our relationship, we talked about this. It's like it's not gonna start when we're together. It starts now. Like this is
No,
not.
exactly.
It's not like you know now it doesn't count when you're not when you're apart, and it
Exactly.
only counts when you're together.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, enjoy. I remember specifically that day when you told me, and I'm very proud and so happy that you like thought about that and just shifted your mindset, and now it is a lot easier to enjoy the moment instead of feeling so bad for so long. So I
Yeah.
remember that.
Exactly. Yeah, and I feel like it alleviates a lot of anxiety as well because
Hmm.
I
For
know in the
sure.
beginning of our relationship I used to get a lot of anxiety being like, "Oh my God, when are we going to see each other again?" Like,
Hmm.
oh, I feel so, like I would get anxiety, you guys. I'm not
Yeah.
going to lie. And yeah, I don't know what happened, but I woke up one day and was like,
Yeah.
this is not fun. Like spending every day being upset about being away from my partner. Like I'm upset, he's feeling down because energy is transferable, and whatever I'm
Hmm.
feeling, he's like feeling that I'm feeling that.
Yeah.
And it's like, how are we enjoying our relationship if we're just focusing on the negatives of it?
Hmm.
Like, yes, it's an ideal situation. It's not very ideal,
Right.
but you can make the most of it. It's all
Hmm.
about making the most of, like, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. That kind of
Exactly.
mindset.
For sure.
Yeah. So that kind of brings me on to our last point,
Hmm.
which is kind of like a general roundup of everything. And I feel like it's really important to focus on the bigger picture,
Right.
to realize, like, okay, are these little disagreements and arguments worth it? To
Hmm.
really take a step back and be like, what are we doing here? Because I know sometimes when Alan and I have disagreements, either one of us will stop and be like, okay, hold on, what are we doing here? Like,
Hmm.
why are we still arguing about this? Like, I love you. Like, this doesn't matter.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
You know what? And again, all these things are all about communication, right? And for us
Mm,
to actually recognize these things is a big thing. Because when you're
mm,
able to step back and look at these things, because in the grand scheme of things, those little petty disagreements or you don't see eye to eye really doesn't mean anything. Like it's not aligned to your goal. It's not aligned to your
no.
happiness, and it
Yeah.
really I mean, most of the time it's a waste of time and wasted emotion because you could just be enjoying each other's time. So
Yeah.
like, yeah, you really, really got to take a step back and assess. We talked about it before. Like, make sure it's an ongoing thing, right? You have to find out and gauge where your relationship is, and it's like, are we
Mm,
doing this properly? Are we doing that, or are we arguing, or are we seeing eye to eye? And again, we're all different, right? Like we're not gonna see things eye to eye all the time. You
mm,
have to like know to agree to disagree, and things are not gonna be the way you want to. But
mm.
again, in the grand scheme of things, and you take a step back, those little things doesn't really make you know, anything about it. Doesn't define your relationship.
Yeah. I mean, like, okay, relationships aren't perfect, and everything that we've talked about
Yeah.
today, it's not like, okay, check, I don't do that anymore. Check, I do this. Check
Right.
that I've got that handled, because you could be recognizing all those things and then you slip. Relationships are like this.
For
Like,
sure.
it's never like, okay, we're going to get to this
It's
point
ascending.
and then we're good.
Right.
It goes up and then it goes down and then it goes, but it's all
Mm-hmm.
about recognizing and learning new ways to navigate through those, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to letting those situations get the best of you. So,
For sure.
yeah, like nothing, absolutely no relationship is perfect in this world. I
Yeah.
guarantee you guys that. Like, Alan and I will not sit here and be like, this is what works for us, this is how it needs to be done,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't do these things anymore, and we've mastered
Mm,
communication in our
right.
relationship, because
Exactly.
that ain't it. We
That's
definitely
definitely
haven't.
not it.
Yeah, and this is something that has to be constantly worked at. Like
Mm-hmm.
relationships are constant work, and
Yep.
effort has to constantly be put into relationships. It's definitely not about like, okay, we've reached that point.
Mm-hmm.
Cool, we're good now. Like it's constantly like up and down. Got to get around this. Like in relationships, you will always be presented with different obstacles and hurdles
Mm-hmm.
and life events that you have to overcome, and it's all about working through them together. I feel like relationships are all about teamwork,
Mm-hmm.
and you both have to be on the same page with things. So that's where communication comes into it,
For
where the
sure.
two of you can recognize how to improve certain aspects of your relationship, and that's how you learn how to get over things quicker. Because granted,
Yeah.
you're going to have disagreements, you're going to argue, you're going to have fights, but it's all about learning new and different ways to get through them. So I feel like that's definitely important to note. It's not about like, okay, here's the checklist of what you need to do, then your relationship's going to be perfect and sweet. No, that's not
That's
it
not
at
going to
all.
happen at all.
No, it's definitely like guaranteed you're going to be like bickering when you're old, but it's all about like how you choose to get through those things. That's really important.
We do a really good job reeling it in and say, you know what, I love you. We stop from there. We just like, you know what, we stop and literally say, you know what, it's not worth it. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
you. Like at end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I love you, and that's it. That's all. That's all it is. And we're doing a great job doing that. Again, it's not gonna be ascending, or we're like you said, once we're doing that, like you're gonna go through it over and over.
Yeah.
Right? It's never
Yeah.
gonna be like once that's done, I'm a master of that now. No, no one's perfect. So
Yeah.
you're always gonna improve and just recognize these things and be aware of
That's
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, I feel like that's definitely a way that we kind of diffuse our disagreements whenever we do have them, is either one of us would be like, okay, I love you, this is not worth it, and that's how we end our arguments. And yes, sometimes one of us may be like, I love you, but I'm still mad, so I need to go and chill out for a bit, and that's fine. Like
Yeah,
we do
exactly.
that too.
And that's
Whereas
like you said, that's
it,
communication.
exactly,
That's part of
yeah.
communication.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean like once you pull out that I love you flag, like that's it, happy days, we're all good.
Right.
Sometimes we pull out that flag and it's like, I love
Yeah.
you, but I'm still mad and I just need to chill out.
When we get over it, I'll let you know when I'm done. And then
Yes.
you know. So
Yeah, yeah. And then it's so funny because like a lot of the time we look back and we're like, why were we so pressed over that? Like that was literally the dumbest thing.
I mean, if you really think about all the stuff that we didn't see eye to eye on, it's like,
Yeah.
first of all, I can't even remember anything anymore.
I can't
and
either.
it doesn't
like, I'm
even
trying
matter.
to think, but I can't remember. Yeah.
It really doesn't matter. Like
Yeah.
now, that's why when you focus on the positive and things that you want to do in a relationship, your goals
Yes.
as a couple, personal goals and couple goals, you're always just gonna you're gonna forget all the stuff that happened in the past that's bad. You're always gonna remember the moments that you guys had together. You know, that's why all of our trips are very memorable, because we had so much fun. And like you said earlier, now imagine all these things that we're doing apart and we're learning from each other. Imagine once we get together, it's gonna be like, you know what? It's our routine that we've done already, and it's easier now. Now I could just hug you instead of just like
Yes.
keep talking. It's so much. It's gonna be so much easier. And I always say, one day, we're gonna do this. We're gonna take a step back and say, "You remember when we were in long distance relationship? You're not even, you're gonna be far removed from that, and it's just gonna be so much easier." So now I'm just so happy that we've learned all these things about what we're going through, and it's gonna be a lot easier, I feel like, in the future for us.
For sure. I definitely agree with you on that one.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty much it, you guys. That is
Yeah.
everything that we wanted to talk about today in terms of like communication, improving communication within your relationship, leveling it up, whatever you want to call it, just learning how to navigate through things better and communicate better.
And
I feel
communicate
like
better,
we
yeah.
can all learn every single day how to improve that. Like we said, nothing is perfect, but it's all about recognizing what you can improve and taking the steps to improve it. So we hope that what we spoke about helped you guys. We hope that it was able to give some insight, or you were able to pull some advice from what we spoke about. Do you have anything else you want to say, my love?
I mean, that's it. Like, again, like I always say every week, just if you guys are on our YouTube channel, please, if there's anything else that we can learn from, or you guys can share, please share it with us, because I'm always on that learning mode. I don't mind. It's never too old to like learn something new. So if there's anything else that you guys want to share about, oh, this what works for us and my partner and the communication, perfect. I would love to learn more about it. So just please don't, just comment on our YouTube channel.
As always, if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever listening service you're tuning into us on, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes that we post. And if you are watching us on YouTube, like Alan mentioned, leave us a comment. Give this video a thumbs up if you did enjoy it, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any more of our posts. So with that being said, thank you again. We appreciate you guys.
Yeah, we do.
Thank you for your support, and we will see you all in the next episode of the One Day Podcast.